Welcome to this tutorial explaining how to create a project area map for Round 7 of the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, or AHSC. Applicants can use this resource to create a project area map, which is a required upload for the AHSC application. This tutorial is a supplement to the AHSC Round 7 Project Area Mapping Guide, shown on the left side of the screen. Applicants find this guide and all other content related to guidelines on the AHSC Guidelines page, shown on the right side of the screen. The mapping guide and this video tutorial detail how to create a project area map using Google My Maps. Applicants may elect to use ArcGIS to create the project area map instead, but must still map the required components detailed in this guide and upload the resulting map in a KML or KMZ file with their application. For this video, I will be using an awarded project from Round 6 as a basis for this example. But note, I will be adapting it to Round 7 requirements, and some of the example components I will demonstrate were not part of the original Round 6 application. Additionally, this guide focuses on how to map the components, and will not go into detail on how to select the project components or the requirements for each scoring category. For those requirements, please see the AHSC Round 7 guidelines, also available on our AHSC guidelines page. Now we will go through the mapping guide. To start out, there is a table of contents that kind of lays out the steps at a high level. To start, there is a summary that includes all of the components required in the project area map. This gives applicants a quick snapshot of the required elements. Now let us go on to the first section. How to set up your Google My Maps project. Applicants may either choose to download a template to start mapping or create their own map from scratch. The mapping guide has instructions for both methods, and I will be going over both methods as well. First, I'll be going over how to download the template. So to download the template, you will first copy this link and paste it into your browser. It is recommended to use Chrome as your browser, but any browser will work. So you can go ahead and copy, and once you paste in, it should appear like this. If you are not signed in, you will see a blue sign in button to the right side. Go ahead and click it, and it will let you go to the sign in page, and you will enter the information needed for your Google account. Once you are signed in, you will know that it will open a new window, and you'll know that by seeing the icon. It's now the icon that I have for my account. Great. So after doing that, you will go ahead and press the three dots to the right side of the title. This will bring up a pop-up which then lists out a couple of options, and you'll press Copy Map, which is the third option on the list. Doing so will bring up a separate pop-up, and you will go ahead and rename the project by clicking on the listed title and replacing it with the ID number dash project name of your project. The ID number would be provided in your application portal, and the project name is the name you have assigned to your AHSC application project name. Since this is an example, I will go ahead and put in standard numbers. So I'm going to put 01 as my ID number, and then project name as my project name. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and press OK. This will go ahead and open a separate window, which will have the template with all the layers in your Google account, as indicated by the icon on the right side. As you can see, there are the 4 layers listed out: base layer, QPS quantitative policy scoring components, GHA components, and radius optional. Now we'll go ahead and go over the instructions on how to create your own Google My Maps. So to do so, you will first go ahead and search for Google My Maps. This will usually be the first result that pops up. You can go ahead and click it. This will bring you to your Google My Maps. Usually, if you have not used it, none of these previous maps will appear. And I will go ahead and press Create a New Map, which is usually on the top left side. This will bring you to a blank map and have Untitled Map as the title. You can go ahead and click that title, and anytime you want to rename something, you can go ahead and click the name that is listed there, and we will rename it the same way as we did the template. So in that case, 01 project name, and then press save. And then you would go ahead and add each of the 4 layers that are indicated. So the first one is already pre-populated, so we would go ahead and click Untitled Layer. This would allow us to edit the name. We would replace it with Base Layer. Then press Save. To add our second layer, we would go ahead and press Add Layer, which is the button right below the title. This will allow us to have a second untitled layer, and we go ahead and click it to rename it. And so then again, we would rename QPS Quantitative Policy Scoring Components. And as you can see, all the naming conventions that are requested are listed in the mapping guide. Go ahead and do the same with GHG. Then I need another layer. Click it, click radius, parentheses, optional. And that's how you would start it if you're creating your own. General instructions for mapping components. So before we go into what to map for each section, I will go over some key features that we will be using throughout this process. And that's mainly how to map and name a line, how to map and name a point, and how to measure distances. So I'm going to bring up an example. So this is just for example purposes. So I've zoomed in at a certain point so we can use an example before going into the detailed steps for how to map each component. So to map and name a line, you would first click on Draw a Line button, which is the 5th button below the address bar. So go ahead and click it. That brings up a little separate pop-up, which allows you to click Add a Line or Shape. You would go ahead and click that. This turns your cursor into a little plus sign, and you would then move your cursor to the starting point of your improvement. So let us suppose the start point of our improvement is along Donovan Road, intersecting with Railroad Avenue. So if that's the start of it, I would then click that point, and that brings up a white dot. And then if my improvement's a straight line, I would just drag it along until I get to the end. Let's say the improvement ends along the 101. To end this line, I would double click. Double clicking brings up a pop-up. This number would change as you are adding lines. So in this case, it's line 1 as it is our first line. We would click on that text and rename as specified for that scoring section. So let's say, so you would go ahead and do this in conjunction with the separate instructions. So I'm just gonna, for now, put rename to scoring section, as this would be different for each component that you are mapping out. And I'll go into that once we're going into specifics. So once you've renamed it, you would then press save. Let's suppose that your line is a non-linear improvement. So let's take, for example, this kind of curved road over here on Pine Street. So I would still then go ahead and press draw a line, add a line or shape. And actually, let's make it a bit more complicated and say it starts on Creston Street and Railroad Avenue. So I'll press here as my starting. So far, it's been I'll just drag it along. So once I hit Pine Street, instead of double clicking, because I want to go down here, and obviously if I pull it down, it doesn't actually follow along. So to make it follow along, I'll press Pine Street intersection once, only once, and this will allow me to continue drawing the line. So I'll continue drawing the line, going downwards. There's a little bit of a curve, so I might have to continue making little segments. I'm going to click once again, not double click, and then drag it along until I get to the next part of the curve. Click once, next part, click once, it's a little one, click once. And then once I hit, let's say the improvement ends when it hits Donovan Road, once it gets to the end, I will then double click, similar to how we did the straight segment. And this again brings up a pop-up with line number, since this is second line, it appears as line 2. And I would rename based on the improvement I'm making. Again, that's detailed in each specific section, and we'll go into that a bit later. But for right now, I'm going to say rename. So I pretend I am renaming it to that specific scoring section. So after doing that, I will press save. So that's how you add a line. So the next example is how to map and name a point. So to map a point, there are 2 ways to go about it. As you can see, Google My Maps is similar to Google Maps in that it has certain markers for key locations. For example, there's an elementary school, has a marker there. Certain businesses have markers. So you can either go ahead and click on those markers, or the best way to do it is to type in the address or GPS coordinates and click search. So for example, since let's say I will want to map Oakley Elementary School. So let's say I only have their address, let's say. So I would type in their address, 1120 West Harding Avenue, and then I would press search. This would allow a pop-up to come up. So it's a green marker, as you can see, and it will allow you to click add to map. So I'm going to go ahead and click it because let's say I am wanting to map this improvement, this key destination, this certain address. So I'll press add to map, and that will allow it to appear in the layer I am in. So currently I'm just under untitled layer, so it appears there. Then if requested, you're going to go ahead and change the color. So you can go ahead and do that by clicking the style button. That's a little paint icon, which is the first button in that pop-up. You can then go ahead and select a more noticeable color as requested. Additionally, sometimes you will be asked to rename the points to match the improvements or the destination that you are identifying. So to do that, you go ahead and click the edit button, which is this pen icon, the second button in this pop-up. This will allow you to rename the address or the name of the location to the requested naming convention. Once you do that, so requested naming convention, you press save. The next example is on how to measure distances, and this will be useful as, just as a way to double check your distances between things, as a lot of the components have to be within a certain distance of your affordable housing development or your sustainable transportation infrastructure improvement. So to go ahead and measure distance, you will use the measure tool, and that is the last icon underneath the address bar. So you can go ahead and press that. And once you click on it, you can click on whatever point you want to start. So let's say I want to measure from Railroad Avenue and Donovan Road all the way to the 101. So I would click on this intersection. And if you want to get more specific, you can zoom in. But I'm going to go ahead and click that. And as you can see that as I drag it along, it gives me an indicator of how many miles it is. And you can use this as a guide as needed. If I click once, I can continue going down a certain path, just similar to how we do when we draw a line. If I double click, the line still stays there as a reference. So you can use that, and for example, we can add still a line and it would still stay there. I'm not going to save this one since it's just an example, but that allows you to do that. But once you click away from that, it will disappear. So that is a helpful tool just to use as a reference for distances and to measure how long a certain segment is and things like that. Great. So after that, let's go into the next section. For this next section, we will go over mapping project components. And to do that, I'll first go back to the Google My Maps project we created by downloading a template. I'm going to also X out of the other tabs so we don't get confused. Great, so this is the download template. So following the mapping guide, the first layer to create would be the radius layer. Again, this is optional, but mapping the radius will help guide applicants on what their project area is. Project area, as defined in guidelines, is a contiguous area with no greater than 1 mile radius from any single chosen point inside the parcel of the affordable housing development. So to create this radius layer, you'll first have to find the center coordinates for your radius. Center coordinates would be a point within your affordable housing development site or AHD site. And so to find that point, we'll first have to find the coordinate points. And to do that, you can go ahead and open Google Maps. This is different. This is the traditional Google Maps instead of Google My Maps. And then you would enter your address here, the address of your affordable housing development site. Doing so will bring you to the area of your housing site. The center point does not have to be where the address pops up, so you can choose any point within this HD site. And to find the coordinates for any point, let's say I want my center point to be in the middle of the HD site, so I'm going to click here. As you can see, there's a pop-up in the bottom. It brings us the coordinates right here, and you would click that right there on the bottom. And this kind of just highlights the coordinates. So go ahead and you can either write down the numbers or copy that. Then you will go to this browsing link. First, let me open that link. This website will help you create the radius layer. And as you can see, it asks for center coordinates. So we'll go ahead and input the numbers as you have either written down or as you have copied. And the radius will be 1 because it will be 1 mile. And then for units, we will choose miles. So we'll include center point, and then we'll click generate. Clicking generate creates this other section called outputs, and then you will click download. This should pop up a file at the bottom or in your downloads file system. Then you will go back to your template, and under radius, you would go ahead and click the import button, which is that blue button right underneath the radius title. You could either drag and drop the downloaded file or select the file from your device. Since I have it here, I'm just going to download and drop. Drag and drop, I mean. This will go ahead and create the radius circle with the center point on your HD. After doing so, you may notice that the radius layer doesn't appear anymore. Instead, it's replaced by this points and circle layer. You can go ahead and unclick the point. So click that just so it doesn't appear here. And while we're editing all the other layers, we're going to turn this off. You can toggle this off and on to see the kind of circle by clicking on this little check box to the left side of the title. But it's good to turn it off while you're working on other layers, as sometimes you can shift it accidentally. And to avoid that and avoid moving the circle where it's not supposed to be, it'd be best to unclick it. Okay, so after doing that, we're going to go ahead and edit the base layer. So to edit the base layer, you go ahead and click right under the title, and to edit any layer, you would do that. And you can double check that it's selected by noting this blue highlight on the left side of that box. So I can see the blue highlight here. That means base layer is selected. That's the layer I want to be editing right now. So that's what I will select. Next, I'm going to go ahead and map the affordable housing development, or the AHD. So using the instruction of mapping an immediate point, you can go ahead and either use the center point of your radius circle. If you've created a radius circle, this is the point you should use. So I'm going to enter the coordinates that I have noted already from when I've created my radius. Search that, and as you can see, there's a green icon that appears. You can go ahead and click that and press Add to Map. And I zoomed in. You can use this plus button to zoom in if you would like, or your mouse. Great. After that, I'm going to name the point as instructed, which is HD project name. This would be the specific project name for your project, but for right now, I'm going to just enter project name. Then as requested, I'm going to change the color of the icon to a more noticeable color. So using the style icon here, I'm going to use like a dark orange. And that would be for that point. If you did not create a radius, you can use any other point within your affordable housing site. You can use the address and enter the address in the search bar here. That would also pop up a green marker, and you could add to map, or you can enter a different coordinates within this affordable housing development site. Just note that the marked HD marker is kind of the center point for what is counted as your mile when you are creating your project area map. So even without this circular, the 1 mile radius still does apply to any project area. Great. So for the next point, which is mapping the qualifying transit station or stop, you can either enter the intersection names into the address bar and kind of search near there and place the marker there. Or you sometimes Google My Maps has the transit stop already mapped. So if that's the case here, I would just click it, the little bus icon, and click Add to Map. Let's say it was not. You can go ahead and click Add Marker, which is the fourth button underneath the address bar, and I would place this marker where my stop is. So let's say it's not actually identified in Google My Maps, but my qualified transit station stop is right here, right underneath Avenue I. I would, after clicking Add Marker, my cursor turns into a plus sign, and wherever I click is where a new marker will appear. And then you can go ahead and rename as requested in the project area mapping guide, or change, yeah, you would do that. So I'm going to delete this one since it's actually this one that is the qualifying transit station stop for this project. Then I'm going to go ahead and edit the name. That is the pen icon right here. And name to qualifying transit station or stop. And click Save. Then changing the color icon to something more noticeable. I'm going to choose a dark purple. Wonderful. After doing that, that is essentially your base layer. Next, we'll go ahead and edit the quantitative policy scoring components layer, the QPS layer. So first, we'll go ahead and select that layer. So I'm going to click right under the title. And again, we see the blue highlight on the left side, so I know I'm on the right layer. Then I'm going to go ahead and map the scoring components that my project is trying to achieve. So for example, if I am seeking points under section 107 QPS A1, which is context-sensitive bikeways, and section 107 QPS A3, which is safe and accessible walkways, we would map the distance of each. So for context-sensitive bikeways, I would map the street, the area in which the context-sensitive bikeway will be. So for this project, there's one along Beach Avenue, from Avenue AH to Avenue Avenue I. And using the instructions of mapping and naming a line, we'll go ahead and draw a line. And double click once I've finished dragging that, and I will rename it and follow this naming convention. So CSB is context sensitive bikeway. So CSB class, and this is the class of bikeway that you are putting in the project. In this case is class 3 bikeway STI. And again, the type of class is specific to your own project. So I would click save. To note, Class 3 bikeways to be context sensitive also must include traffic calming measures. The list of traffic calming measures can be found in the quantification methodology of the benefits calculator, which is on our guidelines page under the CCI quantification link. So to go ahead, you would also need to map the traffic calming measures if this is class 3. So in this case, this is class 3. I would need to map the traffic calming measures included. So to do that, for example, one of the traffic calming measure options is a curb extension. So I would go ahead and click add a marker, and let us suppose that the curb extension will be right by each avenue on this side. So I would click there. And the reason I'm using a marker is because a curb extension is best represented by a point. And so that's why I'm using add a marker. And then I would rename it to bikeway, just as it's asked in the mapping guide, bikeway traffic calming measure curb extension. And again, the traffic calming measure is specific to your project. And then I would complete it for the other traffic calming measures as needed for this class 3 bikeway. So in this example, there's another bikeway that they've included, and that is along Avenue I. So I'll go ahead and add another line. And then we're going to put it from here all the way to Sierra Highway. Double click, then rename it to its appropriate class name. So when the CSB class 2 bikeway save. Great, so then we have our 2 bikeways mapped out. So next we'll go ahead and map our safe and accessible walkway, if that is a scoring category that the project is going for. So let's go back over here. This project has safe and accessible walkway along Beach Avenue as well. So go ahead and add a line of shape. Start down here. Sorry. Sometimes it kind of connects to the previous line and you want to avoid that so that it'd be easier for you later on. I'm going to click on the other side of it. Still go down Beach Avenue. Double click. And I will rename it to the street name, so Beach Avenue. Save. Nexus. To note, for safe and accessible walkways, those are made up of individual improvements. So for example, I might be improving part of the sidewalk here, part of the sidewalk here, and then improve both of these, this continuous block. But as we stated in the mapping guide, we're not mapping the individual improvements, so you don't have to like put markers or put little lines on where those improvements are. Just map the block face is improved. So let's say this entire block face was improved if it was on this other side, I would map it on the side of the road. And so I would just do the line overall, not the individual improvements. Great, so that's for the safe and accessible walkway. Going down, if an applicant is seeking points for bicycle network connectivity under Section 107 QPSA 2, you would map a naming line for the portion of the existing bike network. So for example, there is an existing bikeway already on Sierra Highway. It runs along Sierra Highway. And my context-sensitive bikeway is already on Avenue I, and it's going to intersect or connect with the existing bikeway. So that qualifies for that point. So to demonstrate that in the mapping, I will map a portion of the existing one. So it doesn't have to be the entire line, but just kind of noting where it is. So I know it runs along Sierra, so I'm just going to start from here and show that it extends past my existing context sensitive, the one I've putting in place with the AHSC. So double click there. Now I'm going to rename this. And sometimes if it clicks away by accident, you can go ahead and click on that based on the list, and it will allow you to edit again. So existing bikeway, Sierra Highway, because this is the existing street name. So then just a reminder, to get these points, the AHSC funded context sensitive bikeway needs to connect to the existing one. We've already mapped the context sensitive bikeway in this previous step, and so that way the existing bikeway is the one we're mapping, so that we can show the clear intersection of both of them. Great. So moving on, if an applicant is seeking point for pedestrian network connectivity in Section 107 QPSA 4, you use the instructional mapping and naming line to map the segment of at least 1,000 continuous linear feet of new pedestrian facilities where none exist at the time of application. Let us suppose that we are creating a new sidewalk along Avenue H8 where none exists at the time. You would go ahead and create a line. But before I do that, just as a reminder, there is the radius circle we've created earlier. We can toggle that on to double check whether our improvements are within the project area and follow the rules laid out in the guidelines. So I'm just going to quickly see, okay, so I can see that improvements made within here, at least starting within there for STI improvements, will count. So Avenue AH, let us suppose it has no sidewalk, would be within the project area. So I'm going to toggle that off again. Go ahead and click the QPS layer because I want to work on this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw that line. So let us suppose, actually, let's make it a non-linear line. So it's going to go along Avenue H8 and then go down Gadsden Avenue. So I'm going to start here. I click once where I want where the improvement is starting. It's going to go along H8, and then I know that the improvement is going to go along Gadsden. So I'm going to click once again, drag down. Let's say it now goes towards Elm. I clicked once, drag, click once, drag, click once, dragging along. And then once, let's say the improvement ends here, I'm going to double click. That will bring up this pop-up, and I will rename to this. So let us suppose that we've gone through multiple streets. I will name it to the main segment it's on. So if I go back here, it looks like the main segment is along Gadsden Avenue. So I will name it Gadsden. Going to rename. You can also undo with Control-Z if needed. So Gadsden pedestrian connectivity, network connectivity. Let me double check that I'm spelling the name right. Gad. Oh, I did not. So, Gad. Gonna edit that name again. Save. Great. So that is how we map that. After doing that, go ahead and map the local bus improvements if pursuing points under section 107 QPS A5. First, go to where the route is being improved. Let's say it's being improved along this line, which has several stops along Sierra Highway. You go ahead and click Draw a Line, add a line or shape, and then just indicate the starting point through the end point, and then double click. Then you'll rename as requested, which is local route, lane miles improved, and then press save. And then if the strategy involves installing kiosks, boarding infrastructure, bulb outs, or bus shelters, which are strategies speed through DNF, you use a point to indicate where those improvements are taking place. So let's say that we are installing boarding infrastructure at this stop and this stop. We would go ahead and use add a marker button, which is the fourth button underneath the address bar. Click right there and rename as requested, which is local route, installation, in this case would be boarding infrastructure. Press save and go ahead and add a marker again and do the same at the other stop. Let's say it's also being improved with the boarding infrastructure, and you can add that there. Press save. Now we can see here after a closer look that this has accidentally been added to the base layer when it should be under the QPS layer. There are two ways to go about fixing this. One is to delete the points and then go ahead and click the QPS layer and add them again. An easier way to fix this would be to drag the points and lines down to the correct layer. So to do that, you click on it and then you just drag it all the way down. I'm going to do that for all three local routes because that should be in the QPS layer. Great. So now that that's done, we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. So the next step is mapping the key destinations. For QPS, key destinations must be within a half-mile of the AHD. The list of key destinations can be found in Appendix A of the guidelines. Go right here to guidelines, it's found on our guidelines page. Appendix A would be over here, and then it would be under K for key destination. So as you can see, it lists out the requirements needed to be an eligible key destination. These links here help determine the eligibility for some of these key destinations, again, not for all. Go ahead and go back to our project. So for that, we would go ahead and identify, we could just go down the list. For example, if we wanted to find this grocery store, we can go ahead and click this link, and I have already pulled it up over here, but let's just do it again. Copy link. It should bring you to this website. And then you can go ahead and enter the address of the AHD or the center for coordinates. Let's do the coordinates. I can go ahead and click the AHD again. This has the coordinates right here. I'm going to copy this and then paste here and press search. And this gives us a snapshot of all of the SNAP retailers that are close to the identified address. To note, the key destinations also require that it be a full-service grocery store or neighborhood market. That is also listed on this, so just have to verify that this is either full-service grocery store or neighborhood market. Let's say I did that and verified it, so I would go ahead and copy the name, either the name of the address or the name of the grocery store I've identified. Go back to the project, and then click, and then enter that into the address bar. First, I want to make sure I'm still in the QPS layer, so I'm going to click that and go ahead and search Bob's Market. And usually it appears within the address bar, so you go ahead and click it, and that should pop up the green marker. Then you can go ahead and click Add to Map, and they will rename based on the requested naming convention. So that would be, this is a grocery store, so grocery store, and it's Bob's 2 Market. And then I'm going to press Save. Let's do that again for another key destination. Let's say, oh, I see a library down here. I want to also make sure that it's also within a half-mile. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Measure Distance button. Click that. I'm going to click where my HD center point is, or the marker, and then go drag to the library. The library is up within 0.353 miles. That's within a half-mile. Then I'm going to go click Select Items so I can get out of this measuring tool. I could either click the library as is if it's already identified on Google My Maps, or add a marker. For right now, I'm just going to click on it and add. I also have, let's suppose that I have verified that it's a public lending library. It is part of the LA County Library, so it should be. And then I'm going to go ahead and press Add to Map. And I'm going to edit so I can name as requested, which would be Public Library. That's the key destination category. And then Lancaster Library, and then press Save. Okay, great. So now we will go ahead and edit the GHA Components layer. So to do that, we will first select the GHA Components layer. You click right under the title. And then we'll go through each of these components. So first would be to map the traffic calming measures within the half-mile of the AHD. And most of these are best represented by mapping a point. So let us suppose that another traffic calming measure, which is, let's say, a curb extension right here on, right here on Fern and Avenue I. First, we'll make sure that it's within the half-mile. It is. Go ahead and add a marker, and then we would rename it to the name listed here. So HD traffic calming measure curb extension. And we go ahead and do that for each traffic calming measure that we would have. So let us suppose that there's another traffic calming measure at 10th Street at I. So go ahead and click Add a Marker and click the corner which this improvement is on. And then go ahead and rename it as requested, which would be HD traffic calming measure curb extension. Next, we'll go ahead and map the bike and pedestrian projects listed on the Active Transportation tab of the GHG Benefits Calculator tool. So for this one, this is what it would look like for round 6. They have a bicycle boulevard on Beach Avenue from Avenue I to H8. So we would go to Beach Avenue. And what actually would be best is if you unclick the quantitative policy scoring layer so it doesn't get confusing. So I'm going to unclick the check mark that is on the left side of the title, and then click the GHG components. And then after doing that, I will go ahead and draw a line, add a line of shape, go along Beach Avenue from H8 to Avenue I, and double click. And it asks us to name it to reflect the project type and name listed in the benefits calculator tool. Since it's named Bicycle Boulevard, I will name it Bicycle. Let's see, let's actually just pull the name from here. Bicycle Boulevard. Let's assume it's bike improvements. And from Avenue H8 to Avenue I. Actually, what would be most appropriate would just be copy the exact wording as listed in the calculator. Bike improvements, Beach Avenue, Avenue I to H8. And then press save. And then this is how it looks like, this is how it looks like in round 7. But just for example, again, this is how it looks like round 6. Great. After that, you're going to have to go ahead and do the similar thing for the rest of the walkways. There are a total of 4 listed in the round 6 application, but for example purposes, I'm just going to map a bicycle boulevard and the walkway. So we can see here that there is a new sidewalk from Elm to Sierra along Avenue I. So I'm going to identify Avenue I from Elm to Sierra. So I'm going to go ahead and add a line, draw a line, add a line or shape, click on Elm since that's where the improvement begins, and then double click when I get to Sierra. Double click, and then I'm going to rename it as I have listed it in the calculator, so Walkway, new sidewalk from Avenue I from Elm to Sierra, and press save. Moving on, we will go ahead and map the key destinations within a quarter-mile and a half-mile of each bike and pedestrian project, as listed in the Active Transportation tab of the GHG Benefits Calculator tool. And those are the improvements we have mapped in the previous step. So as an example, I've only mapped 2 of them. In reality, there were 4, but just to keep it simple, I've mapped 2 of them. So I'm going to find the key destinations within a quarter-mile and a half-mile of this facility. It can be from any point within the facility. So you can map measuring from this starting point over here. It just needs to be within a half-mile of along this line. To note, the key destinations that are used here are the same list that is used in the QPS. So as I've mentioned before, it's in the Appendix A of Round 7 guidelines. And as noted here, key destinations that are within a quarter-mile can also count within a half-mile as well. Okay, so to start out, there is this a bike walkway over here, and we can go ahead and find, let's say, the library and park. Those are 2 easily identifiable key destinations. So let's see what's the distance of this park. I'm going to measure it kind of from the closest end. That is well before the quarter-mile. So I'm going to go ahead and double click the measuring so I can get rid of that, and then go ahead and click add a marker. So I'm going to go ahead and add a marker where it says Heroes Park. And I'm going to rename it. So the key destination category would be public park. And we will name it based on quarter-mile or half-mile, or we can name it quarter-mile and half-mile. Since it's within a quarter-mile, it means it's also within half a mile. So I'm going to name it 0.25 and 0.50. And then the name of the location is Heroes Park, and put dash Heroes Park. Then I'm going to click save. So let's go into the Lancaster library. Let's see. So the facility is over here. I'm going to click on entrance from there and then go down This is 0.372 miles away. So this is within a half mile, but not within a quarter mile. So I'm going to go ahead, and again, you can click either, so one, make sure to double click the measure thing so it gets off that setting. And if it gives you trouble like that, you can always go ahead and click this hand icon that will allow you to just drag in the map around. Great. So you can go ahead and click the icon already listed on Google My Maps, or you can enter the name into the address search bar if you know of a different location. Since I can see it here, I'm just going to click on it. And then I'm going to click Add to Map. And then following the naming convention here, key destination category would be public library. Colon. So this is within a half mile, but not within a quarter mile. So I will name it 0.50 and then dash location name, which is Lancaster Library. Sorry, 0.50 miles dash Lancaster Library. Press save. So these two key destinations would be qualifying for this one. I would go ahead and find the key destinations that are near this one as well. As we can see, this key destination is also within a half mile of this different facility along Beach Avenue. So this would count as the half mile one, but not as the quarter mile one for this facility. But for the facility along Avenue I, since this key destination is within a quarter mile, that would count as a key destination within a quarter mile and a half mile for the facility along Avenue I. So let's drag around. I can see that there's another park here, and it seems to be pretty close to this facility along Beach Avenue. So I'm going to click the measuring distance. I'm going to click the closest kind of entrance to the facility and then to the park. As I can see, it's within a quarter mile. So I'm going to go ahead and select items, and then go ahead and click on this icon since I can see it there. I can see that it's the city of Lancaster, so it is most likely a public park. You can also go to the website and double check that it is a public park before identifying it. So let's say I went ahead and did that and verified it was a public park. I'm going to go ahead and add it to map. Then I'm going to go ahead and rename it public park. It's within a quarter mile and a half mile and 0.50 dash location name is Whit Carter Park. So I'm going to put Whit Carter Park. Save. Then I see that there is a public, well, it seems to be a public school. I can go ahead and verify whether it's a public school by using the link provided here. It's be a helpful way to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, open link, and then I'm going to search for this name of the school. So since it doesn't come up, I'm going to instead put Lancaster. And then I can go ahead and search here. And I can see that Mariposa, and I'm making sure that the address maps, the matches, 737 West Avenue, it matches. And another quick way that might be helpful is knowing that this seems to be the Lancaster Unified School District website. So after verifying that it is a public elementary school, I can go ahead and measure the distance. So this is within half a mile of this facility, but not within a quarter mile. So I can go ahead and I could either add the marker using the add marker button or click on this icon. So to click on the icon instead, I'm going to click select items and then click on the location. And then I'm going to press add to map. And again, following the naming convention, I will name it Public Elementary School. Again, we said it's within a half mile, not a quarter mile, so 0.50 miles dash the name. And it was the name of the school is Mariposa Computer Science Magnet School. And click save. And again, you would go ahead and do that until you've identified all the key destinations around each facility that you've wanted to identify. Great, let's move on to the last step for GHG, which is mapping a linear transit improvement, for example, a bus line, rail track extension, or using the instructional mapping and naming point if we're mapping a nonlinear transit improvement, for example, a signal priority installation. If the linear transit improvement is too long to map, applicants may submit an additional KML/KMC version of the proposed transit project, or as the last resort, submit the PDF illustration of the proposed project. So for this project, they have a nonlinear transit improvement at this stop, this terminal. So I would go ahead and click the terminal, or click the best location for it, of where the improvement is taking place, and then click Add to Map. Again, if it's not already identified in Google My Maps, you can click Add a Marker, which is the fourth button underneath the address bar, and then go ahead and click where the improvement is taking place. I'm going to do that. Then you're going to go ahead and rename to the appropriate name that reflects the project type and name listed in the GHG benefits calculator tool. Let's say for this one, it is a capital improvement. Let us suppose for this one, it's also a transit priority signal on, and this would be the Metrolink line. Let's assume that's the name of this line. So press save. Again, if it was a linear improvement, you would go ahead and click draw a line or shape, and then you would go ahead and map the line for the distance that is being improved. Great. So after doing all of that, you can go ahead and click on all the other layers if you would like, just to see the complete look of your map. As we've noted before, there's also the radius circle. You can double check that most the improvements are in the project area for the SDI, at least starting within the project area, or have a station stop within the project area. Great. So after doing that, you're going to go ahead and finalize and upload. So to finalize and upload your map, you're going to have to download the file. So click the three dots to the right side of the project name, and then you can go ahead and click export to KML/KMC. It's almost to the bottom of the pop-up. And then you can go ahead and just click download. This usually brings it up to the bottom of your browser. If not, it will bring it up to the downloads of your file. And then you can go ahead and just note that this file name is the same name as our project. So as you can see, it's the ID and the project name. And so you would then take this file and upload it to the application portal. So that is how you create a project area map. If you have any questions, know that we are developing a question and answer, a form for applicants to submit questions related to guidelines, and application materials for round 7 of AHSC. This will be posted on our guidelines page and announced via our updates and announcement list, so keep an eye out for that. And to note, you can sign up for our updates and announcement list via this e-list right here. For any general questions, you can email us at ahsc@sgc.ca.gov, but note that any application-related questions or guidelines-related questions, we will encourage people to submit via the question and answer form that will be up on this guidelines page in January. We also have upcoming webinars and workshops planned, so be sure to sign up for our mailing list and to keep up to date with the latest information. Thank you again for tuning into this video tutorial for how to create a project area map for round 7 of AHSC.